Hi everyone, Denise Vitola, and I'm back for another episode of Under the Influence. It's a show I host at Linkia that goes under the hood on how brands influence consumers with impactful creative partnerships. I guarantee you'll walk away from these conversations with tangible lessons and ideas on how you can start and or up level your influencer marketing efforts. So excited today to dig in and get under the influence and saucy. Pun is totally intended with my next guest, the sauce queen, hot sauce queen. That's a name I gave her. She might already have it. But we're going with saucy with food and cooking. It's all the rage right now on social media, especially with influencers and especially when it comes to hot sauce. You ever hear of a thing called hot wings in football? Well, guess what? It's not all about football and it's not all about hot wings. And I was surprised to hear that. And I can't wait to hear from Valda to talk about that as well. She comes from the McCormick company, that's Valda Coryat, and she's here to talk to us about some of the brands that she oversees. She is the North American Vice President of Marketing, Condiments and Sauces, and in her role, she is responsible for, you guessed it, hot sauce. And she oversees the growth of the condiments and sauces business. And she's also responsible for overseeing the P&L as well as in-market results as it comes to hot sauce, mustard, barbecue, marinades, mainstream Mexican sauces, and the emerging condiments category. Prior to joining McCormick and Company, she held roles at Colgate-Palmolive, Heineken, and the National Mango Board. I'm so excited to have you here. We were just talking who doesn't love sauce, and like I know I gave like your corporate bio and all the things, but you have just such a great background and an interesting story to tell. So let's get a little bit more personal. Like tell us about yourself and what excites you and what gets you up in the morning, and and then weave it into what you're doing with hot sauces.
Yeah, so it's no surprise that my career would ultimately take me to this category in this company, because I literally was born in the sun, as I like to say, right, in the Caribbean. I love mangoes. I like hot sauce because I've been eating it probably as long as I can remember. If you can imagine a 5-year-old, right, being able to eat food, doused with what we call the sauce, right? What is the secret sauce that made that thing taste so good? So, it's been a really fun journey from a career standpoint because I've touched household staples. You mentioned Colgate-Palmolive. Everybody brushes their teeth, I hope. You wash your dishes, certainly, beer, wine, and spirits. But, coming into really food and bev overall, there's this really interesting dynamic that's happening now. I don't think consumers can get enough.
They can't.
Right.
Yeah.
So, standing behind me, or I call them standing, that's my squad that's behind me here. Right. I went to Duke undergrad, so basketball is definitely in my DNA as well. But I brought some of my squad with me, which is Frank's Red Hot, and Cholula. And I mean, we're busy, right? We're busy giving the consumers, the audiences, the people, give the people what they want,
Yes.
When they ask for a flavor, we're right there. Sometimes it's flavors they haven't even thought about yet. And we can get into that a bit, right? Yeah. So it's really, really fun. And, just having family all over the world, I've certainly been observing sort of how those global influences are also impacting the category.
Yeah. I love that you're looking at all of that stuff, and we're definitely going to get into it. I'm appointing Frank's the point guard of your squad.
There you go.
But
good choice.
But I mean, influencer marketing, like, everyone thinks it's something so new, but I've just been around for too long, I guess. And it's not necessarily, but everyone's forming this like new point of view on it, I'd say post-COVID. And what is I know you're using influencer marketing, but like, what is your point of view and how you're infusing it in everything that you're doing?
For me, it's about everything from listening, right? How are you really keeping a pulse on what people actually think? Not what a survey, a formal research, may tell you, what consumers may tell you and that sort of thing. But, in the moment, right? Being part of the culture, being part of people's lives on a day to day. Really, for me, influencer marketing is as much as it is tapping into that social listening and knowing who are the actual influencers. It's not as predictive
Mhm.
as maybe it used to be, right? A lot of times I think we certainly leverage celebrities. Everybody knows, Jason Kelsey with our Super Bowl ad last year, but beyond the known, right? There are folks out there who have huge influence on their peers, friends, family. They're really, I think, changing the game for us in terms of how we, do we even plan? How much is planned versus unplanned? I think that's a really good point to make here, is that that's what influencers have actually done, I think, to the industry is, gone are the days of neatly planning everything
Yes.
and being really nimble and agile to say, oh, something popped, can I reach out to this influencer? What can they do for us from both a content creation standpoint, as well as actually ultimately driving sales.
Yeah, and that's so important because I talk to brands all the time, and I myself used to be on the brand side. And I say, either you're going to make influencers your partners or they're
Mhm.
going to be your competitors.
That's
And
right.
I think you said that we look at what people are doing and what are the ways we can partner up with them. So
Hmm.
it's really unique and exciting, an exciting
Hmm.
time. But in preparing for this conversation, I tasted every hot sauce. No, I didn't, but I do love hot sauce. But in preparing
Yeah.
for the conversation, and when we first met and started talking, and when I was like, "Oh, hot sauce must be busy the end of the year because of football season," and you said not really for that reason, I wanted to just glean more insight myself, and it is interestingly enough, the busy season, according to some of the data and statistics I
Hmm.
pulled in 2023, is really October, November, and December.
Hmm.
And hot sauce rivals during those periods of time ketchup, mustard, and soy sauce, which are really the
Hmm.
leaders in the condiment category.
Hmm.
So I've let people wait long enough. Like if
Hmm.
it's football season, what is it that's really giving the uptick to hot sauce during the season? And then I'm going to bolt on another question. Are you executing more
Hmm.
influencer campaigns during this season?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So what I would say is it's not during football season only, it's year round. Right. And I mentioned sort of my global travels. I talked about global influences. What we're seeing is, traditional condiments, certainly your mayo, mustard, ketchup are huge, right? And mayo actually being the largest generally across all categories. But when you zero in on Gen Z, on millennials and younger, right? Younger consumers overall, hot sauce actually is number two. So hot sauce is replacing ketchup occasions. People
Love
are
it.
not, ketchup is not their preferred, as much anymore. And so as that wave continues, you have to think about, well, what are the occasions that they were using ketchup for? Whether it's, fries, right? Cooking as an ingredient, right? So all of a
Mhm.
sudden you've got texture coming in. It's not just for the heat, it's for the flavor combination, it's for the texture, enhancement that maybe hot sauce provides as well. And so whether it's a barbecue
Yeah.
or football season, right? Or even obviously Cinco de Mayo, right? Which again is not tailgating season, but who doesn't want to include, right? Something Mexican influenced as well. So I got to bring in my Cholula, right? We got a full team, full squad, as I mentioned. We got Frank's Original, we got Frank's Buffalo, and of course we got a whole range of Cholula flavors. But it really doesn't matter from breakfast to lunch to dinner to snacks in between, people are using hot sauce. And so that's the demand that we're trying to meet, and making sure that we're there for all seasons. Now, your question on influencers, absolutely. I think what is also interesting is the time of year or the times during the year that people are the most social,
Okay.
right? It's about crowd pleasing,
Okay.
right? And I'm going to use crowd in both the literal and figurative sense, right? Maybe online, offline crowd. And so the influencers come into play because you know what, we recognize that every household has its own unique dynamics, right? Everyone isn't married with, 2.5 children. Some people actually enjoy not being married. Good for them. I don't know anything about that. I had 3 children myself. But I enjoy, my time when I'm just with my girlfriends or, hanging with just a group of friends, period. So the influencer piece is about that crowd, right? Recognizing the individuality, woven throughout our society, and really tapping into that and making sure that you are the brand of choice for as many people as possible. And you recognize that, you know what, I don't know all messages that will resonate. I may not have the language, right, that is necessarily going to resonate with all consumers. So that's why influencers are hugely important, is I think everything from top of funnel to bottom.
I totally agree. I say to people all the time, it depends on what you're trying to achieve.
That's right.
In that, where you should be engaging influencers. And even when you talk top of the funnel and all the way through, that's how you align what your metrics are, or the types of influencers you're using. So if you're really trying to turn somebody into buying the product, you're going to use one type of influencer versus another. So if you're just awareness, you're looking at those mega influencers because you really want to buy into their numbers. So it's very different. And I think influencer marketing is way more sophisticated than it used to be. I think it was like, I think you can appreciate, like me, like the early days of when I used to laugh at Vine, and it used to crack me up. And YouTube was really like a beginner in influencer marketing and mommy bloggers. And I think about, where is this world going? And one of the things you talk about, and I think, is really having your ear to the ground to identify what's happening. And when you think of recipes and advice on what does my recipe need, or what are the ingredients I'm adding into it, like you used to go to recipe sites and there were recipe books, but the future is all about social. Getting all of your recipes from social, from influencers. And I really feel like when I talk about this partnership between creators and brands could be at the forefront of this by even being their own content houses with this recipe boom that's happening. And I feel like you find that stuff out through the community and the social listening that you speak about. But like, what are you hearing through listening to your community that's been really insightful for you?
Authenticity, right? And so I think at the core of any true community is there's something that is authentic, endemic, like common, right, to them. And so it's not okay always, right, for a brand to just develop a message and think that everybody's going to follow, right? If I say, Frank's puts that bleep on everything, right? Maybe, it would best come from somebody who authentically shows you that they do it versus just saying it, right? And I think, it's funny, there's a lot about AI and technology. I just saw a new ad from a brand recently that is completely AI generated. And, whenever we have this conversation in the industry about, how important that's becoming, I go, yeah, but human emotion, I don't think any machine has yet figured out how to project or predict human emotion. There are so many, you can mimic it. Maybe, and if somebody's telling a joke, you can make them all laugh, right? But did people feel that laugh at their gut level? I think people can usually see through when somebody's being authentic or not. And so from an influencer standpoint, what I think I've really learned is that, it's really this continuous loop of, you're leveraging the influencer certainly for brand awareness, right? You're hoping that you're driving loyalty because they're connected to a community that trusts their opinion because they are authentic, right? And then ultimately, you're trying to get them to purchase. But again, if they naturally do it, because to your point, we made it easier for them. You're hovering over this dish that you just gotta have. You're like, oh my God, that looks so good. Like, you don't want 6 clicks, right? You're gonna hover over it, and then you're like, oh, okay, click. And then all of a sudden, all of the products, right, that company or whatever used to create that recipe is available for purchase. We do that on our direct to consumer site, right?
Yeah.
So, particularly, Cholula, we just launched an effort and we're seeing that. So, and a lot of the influencers actually gave us ideas into what recipes, people are actually talking about and are engaged in right now. How fast are people moving from the old traditional taco, right, to chilaquiles, to, birria? Like, you start seeing birria, popping in search and, all of those things faster, right, than we could necessarily predict. We look at menus and all of that. But again, it's, things are happening. Somebody has to feed that data into some system. The system kicks out a report. Somebody on the other end has to read the report and interpret. And yeah, you can see longer term trends. But in terms of being first and in the moment and driving, delivering, right, for your business and your brands, influencer marketing is where it's at.
I love that. Thank you. Hallelujah. And I said the same thing. So I came from working in various industries, and I'm all in influencer every day because I believe in it. And I want to make a crazy prediction, which I don't think is so crazy, but one of the things that, and I'm going to digress a second because you gave me an idea with AI, and anyone that's listening can steal this right now. But where AI can help with the recipes is I follow different influencers that put up recipes that I want and all the stuff. Where AI can help is if there's a way for me, imagine it's similar to click to cart, but it's click to like take that recipe and like download it on my phone and then all the ingredients. So then I can go shop for that recipe. Yeah. So like I need a button now that you made me think of, and somebody in the world in AI can develop this. And I think it would be brilliant to partner and have the recipes so they're right in your phone so you can shop for them. Anyways, I digress, but you gave me an idea, and I think somebody can run with it on the call. But I want to make a prediction, and I want to hear one of your predictions about the future of where influencers are going, where the rise of influencers. So for me, I think 80% or more of content in 2025 will be creator generated. So I believe that's where the future is going. And I'm very aggressive at talking to the people I work with and convincing others whenever I have an opportunity to talk about how ads are so different now. It's not about the traditional ad. It's about how you can influence in the way you're talking about. So that means more creator generated ads are really to take over what's happening in the advertising world. And really, when back in the day, when I used to sit in these integrated marketing meetings, advertising, that idea and that asset was at the core, the center. Yeah. And I really feel like influencer and social is what's really at the center and the core now, and that listening you're speaking about, and everything else is generating off of it. So that's my big prediction of 2025. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
80% feels high to me. So I don't know if it's going to be 80%, but I think the direction that you're pointing us is probably right. Of course, it always comes down to like, who's your core target? Yes. Right. I have so many brands. I have like 8 brands, right, within the condiments portfolio here at McCormick. So influencers play a role to a different degree, right, depending on who that growth target is, right? We've got those who've been buying mustard forever, right? And then there are the people who were like, mustard is really still cool, I promise you. You may not be eating hot dogs anymore, but I know you need mustard in your life. And so, I think the 80% absolutely applies when you're talking about brands that have already started to gain that momentum with that younger consumer, right? And younger, I'm using loosely. I'm not going to say any particular, generation in that regard, or maybe more those who are more digitally engaged, right? For those who maybe are like, nope, I'm turning it all off. I don't want to watch it anymore. You got to reach them some other way. But for sure, if you are highly digitally engaged, right? And you are constantly seeking either entertainment, right? It's not always information. It's not always recipes. Sometimes people are just simply entertained. And because they were entertained and they saw a product or food or, recipe in front of them, they engaged. So that was the hook that got them there, right? I think in that case, so what it's done is it's actually made our creative mix and media mix more complex
Yeah.
because as a for-profit corporation, you always have to keep in mind, right, the payback. So if you're spending dollars, right, what is my return on investment?
Mhm.
What are those metrics that are going to keep the budget that you have or allow it to grow in subsequent years? And I wouldn't be who I am and working where I am if I didn't mention that. But yeah, so so I think the payback from a financial perspective is hugely important, and how we validate that, right? If you did not leverage this suite of influencers, because again, the lights went out. Now I have to move. You guys, can you see me? Okay.
Yes, energy efficiency is
Yeah,
important too at McCormick and Company, as you
it
all can
is.
see.
It absolutely is. And so, yeah, so if you, if you have more content to manage, you have to, figure out how you leverage them, when you leverage them, when are people actually tuning in, tuning out. I think that's the other piece of it is if you're going 80%, man, that's a lot to
Yeah.
manage, to keep up with, to track, right? To really measure
Yeah.
what was their impact and who you should, use again.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
guess my theory is shoot for the stars and land on the moon.
Yes, yeah.
Um, but you talk about measurement, and it's another hot topic when it comes to influencer marketing, and a
Mhm,
conversation again that you have with people, and some people are like, yeah, I can't do influencer because I don't really know how to measure it, and I can't get the ROAS, or I'm not getting
mhm,
the MMM reading, or things like that. But
mhm,
um, I love and appreciate the time I spent in
mhm,
house, because I know that it can happen, and it's
mhm,
about, to me, really aligning organizations, like your
mhm,
organization aligning with the influencer measurement strategy. So if you're
mhm,
using a partner like Linkia, having the team sit down with your internal measurement team and
mhm.
making sure we're aligning on,
Yeah.
are we measuring apples to apples? Are we measuring oranges to oranges? If you are doing MMM or MTA, are we
Mhm,
in that mix? And how can we be in that mix? And are we
mhm.
testing, doing some A/B testing? Are we
Yes.
working with our platform partners? So I do believe there are ways to measure it, and there's ways to prove it back to
Mhm.
the company so you can get more money.
Yeah, yeah,
What are your ingredients, or
yeah,
tools that you are
yeah.
using to measure?
Yeah, and I will say, we have a team of people that does this, so this is not me doing it by myself. We have a whole global marketing organization that really drives a lot of our media, and I would say, things like performance media
Hmm.
is important way to look at things. And so for us, we do have a marketing mix model
Yeah.
as well. But we also think about the halo, right? So if it's tied to a specific campaign and, let's say retailer effort, right?
Hmm.
We've got those metrics, but there's always the halo that affects, for example, trial awareness, especially if it's for a new product. And then we've got brand loyalty, right? Is something that we're talking a lot about recently. And how can we help with that build out? So, sometimes you can literally quantify, the social media metrics,
Right.
but really going beyond that to see, how has that use of influencer actually performed without, versus without as well. So to your point on A/B testing, I think that's the other way that we're really looking closely at things.
Yeah, that's
Mhm,
great. I hope that you'll allow me to steal that halo,
mhm,
because I really like that, and I like the
mhm,
way that you describe it, because it's not just one thing that happens; it's
mhm,
like the domino effect. So
mhm,
I love that, and I hope others can borrow that from you and just give
mhm.
you a little bit of credit for it.
Thanks. Give
Yeah.
credit to the total McCormick, media team for sure. Mhm,
We will. Um, So you've done a lot of influencer executions.
mhm,
You've also worked at a lot of different companies. Is there one execution, and maybe it's not yours, maybe it's something you saw. I always like to
mhm,
ask the question that, is there something that you loved or really got you excited?
Mhm. Yeah, so I'll give credit actually to another category here at McCormick. We do great work, and we've had some great influencer campaigns on Frank's. But I've talked a lot about Frank's today. But we've got these new, spices basically, and they're really clever, right? It's like I have a T-shirt for one of them that says, um, endless ramen tick. So ramen, right? So it's the spices that you would use as you're making ramen noodles, etc. But that was one where, they leveraged influencers, and literally in that campaign, it was a direct to consumer effort. Products sold out in a day, in less than 24 hours.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it was, clearly a hit. Retailers, looked out for it as well, and realized, oh my God, we have to have this on our shelves. So I think, there it was almost like a test case, right, of being influencer first,
Yeah.
right? And with a new product. And that led to such success that it actually translated to brick and mortar, right? So it started, online, and then it eventually now is in stores. So
Yeah.
Flavor Maker is the campaign that I'm referring to. Flavor Maker products.
Nice. I
Mhm,
love that. Thank you for sharing it. And
mhm,
I love that you made t-shirts too, because one of the things that I think is such a hit are companies like Dunkin' does a great job at it. And I'm sure
mhm,
you've seen they made sneakers and,
mhm,
and track suits, and people want to get their hands on this. And I think,
mhm,
like you said, the younger generation just has different desires and needs, and the way that
mhm,
they want to have a relationship with a brand is so
mhm,
that it's like we have an opportunity to really deliver in so many ways. The windows, doors of the house are really open to really
mhm.
engage with this consumer.
Yeah, and it's a badge, right? I mean, it's almost like if you think about how passionate people are, we'll take it back to sports, right? Because Frank's it's football season right now, right? For me, it's always basketball season, but you know, people wear. I was out yesterday in stores, and people are wearing. We have some. A lot of Ravens fans, because I'm in Baltimore, right? But the Eagles were playing last night.
Yes.
And whether you're in Maryland, absolutely. When I wear a Cholula t-shirt, people are stopping me like, where'd you get that t-shirt? I don't tell everybody that I work on Cholula, but, I go, oh, you know what? Go online or whatever. I try to point them in the right direction, but it's a badge. It's a source of pride, and I think people are, absolutely almost, your consumers could be influencers too, I guess maybe is where I'm going with this, is
Yeah.
that if you really generate that brand love, because everyone's creating practically content
Mhm.
online, right? Whether they're compensated for it or not. You see folks all the time, and it's, wearing that brand means something,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of, I would say a lot of the startup brands maybe do more of that than I've seen some more traditional heritage brands do it. But again, that's one of those areas that's not very quantifiable, right? If someone's wearing their favorite brand's T-shirt every Saturday as they go about their business, right, shopping and running errands and whatever else, or stop at a gas station, you know, we can't count that,
Right.
right? But it's still keeping that brand top of mind. And so the balance, of, incorporating those types of things, I think is where, you get a sense of that brand love. And if you got some cool swag, I mean, listen, that almost replaces, it gives a lot of the clothing stores a little bit of run for their money. And you're seeing a lot of co-branding as well, right? Brands also are partnering with sneaker manufacturers or what have you, so that, they're doing it. It ends up being more of an everyday thing than just, only when a game is on, or only when, I made this recipe. That doesn't even make sense. Like, why would I just wear a Cholula t-shirt when I'm eating something with Cholula on it, right? I'm going to wear it when I'm in a Cholula mood, right? So what is that?
Ooh, I
What is
love
that moment?
food.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think the collabs with brands are amazing. Like, and I think Elf does a really good job at that
Mhm.
with like Liquid Death and
Yes, yeah.
Chipotle, and
Mhm.
it's almost like you have no business being there, like as a
Right.
makeup brand with Chipotle, but boy, did
Right.
that ever work. Like, did
Yeah,
it ever work? And those
exactly.
collabs are really,
Mhm.
it's fun because you're borrowing equity from
Mhm.
a brand that you're not like. So you're
Yeah,
bringing a whole new consumer
that's
into
right.
that category. So it's just, it's really brilliant and interesting.
Mhm.
And sort of leading with creators there to tell
Mhm.
that story is
Yeah,
really resonating really well.
absolutely. I also would say we all have to challenge ourselves to go into those, into those areas where there's influencers that maybe we're not as familiar with. And I say this because, you know, um, Reddit, for example,
Yeah.
is not as obvious to people because, at least to my knowledge, I'm not in Reddit that often, but I don't think you can purchase from there. And so to me, though, if you want truth about how people are thinking, about anything, topics of the day or whatever, you go in there and you get it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not listening as well, right, within places like Reddit and some of the newer um, you know, uh, I'll call it social media that are popping. There's a lot of new stuff happening now, new communities forming, new technologies being used. Then you're probably missing
Yeah.
some of the conversation. And I think the scrappier I worked a lot in more startup PE-backed companies, and how they get their information is so different than larger companies, and it literally is of the moment, and then they flip it into either new product launches or actual campaigns to consumers literally overnight, like 24, 48 hours, right? But again, it comes from places that almost most people don't see. But for the people who do see it, they're really passionate about it,
Really
right?
passionate. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing this podcast. I mean, gosh, everybody should by now know how powerful podcasts can be, right?
Yes. Yes.
Opinions, deep conversation, people who are regular listeners to Under the Influence, right? They
Yes.
come back time and time and time again because the content that they're getting is so meaningful and so authentic, right? So it's like, you know what, let me tap in here. It's like me visiting somebody that I just enjoy hanging with or talking to, right? Let me
Mm.
pop in here. I'll check in once a week. Hey, what's up? What are you doing? All right, let me meet you over here. And then, it kind of just flows naturally from that.
Yeah. And that's what influencers are. That
Hmm.
small community of people that you think is your community and your friends, and you're getting information, and you're getting
Hmm.
all of the ideas and everything
Hmm.
that's going on. I just finished reading The Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell.
Hmm.
And it's just, he's always brilliant and interesting.
Hmm.
But one
100%.
of the
Yeah.
most interesting things that I gleaned from it is how a third of the population or of a community of one set is really the ones that are shaping and driving the message. It's not the
Hmm.
majority. It's these like superpower uh,
Hmm.
people that are being able to change how things are, or in that place he was talking about change, but really like influence the spread of maybe brand love is really
Yes.
what it's all about. And it got
Yeah.
me thinking really back to what I do every day about influencer marketing. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's this small group that is influencing the many to
Hmm.
really create a movement. And whether the
Hmm.
movement is like eat more hot sauce or the
Right.
movement is to wear more makeup,
Hmm.
it really is just so profound in how something like this has really caught fire.
Yes, yeah, and it almost it's not time bound, right? I think, again, these communities, wherever they are, when are they listening? When are they having conversations with each other? It's could feel exhausting. I'll be honest, for the marketers out there, maybe you're kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, when are you not working, right? And I'm like, you know what, if you really enjoy what you do like I do, I would say I probably never turn it off. It's just sort of unconsciously I'm taking things in that will spark an idea, right? Or I'm hearing, oftentimes from my kids actually, who are all Gen Z, like, Ma, you didn't know about that. I'm like, excuse me. No, I didn't. Like, how would I? Like, oh, because we heard it on whatever, we saw it on whatever. And I'm like, oh, my friends did. I'm like, okay, well, I'm listening. That wasn't work, right? It wasn't work time. We're just hanging out and having fun. And, all of a sudden I'm learning about this new influencer that I know resonates with, some Gen Z kids, right? And why, and the why behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I recently learned about Miss Rachel, who is like this gangbusters for babies to watch on TV, because I was
Mhm.
visiting my grandbaby, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I work with in the baby category. And I'm like, so I'm
Mhm.
writing down Miss Rachel. So
Yeah.
I had a similar experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Valda, I could talk to you forever, but I really want to end on you sharing to our community here,
Mhm.
any advice that you have if somebody's
Mhm.
either, like I said in the beginning, trying to get started in influencer marketing or really
Mhm.
trying to level what they're doing. What would be
Mhm.
your advice for them?
Yeah, I would, it goes back to the listening, right? I would say, live life, like really live life. Go all the places, do all the things, right? And maybe take sort of a mental note of what actually stays with you.
Hmm.
And if you can find it afterwards, because I think that's the other thing that's beautiful about influencers and the communities that they form. It's like you no longer go somewhere, right? Before there were cell phones, right? You go somewhere, you experience something, and you have to have that memory to hold on to it. Well, now, right, via social media, and obviously everybody's taking pictures of everything, you know, you can actually continue that experience beyond that original moment. And if you start to see and feel those types of things, then maybe that's an influencer for the brands that you're working on, right? That
Yeah.
you need to follow more closely, tap into. And then I would say, top of funnel, bottom of funnel, let's challenge ourselves to say, what role does influencer play,
Hmm.
um, you know, in the full funnel, and are we actually leveraging it enough, and so the challenge of really inserting, I think, a broader approach to measurement,
Hmm.
that is both short and long term.
Yeah, I love
Mhm.
that. And there's so much great emotion in that from the heart.
Mhm.
And I really love
Yeah.
that. It's so meaningful.
Yes.
So, really, thank you for being here and
Mhm.
having this conversation. I really,
Mhm.
truly enjoyed it. Use less salt and more hot sauce. And that'll change your life. So,
Yes. Yeah.
again, thank you for joining us. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and for everybody, that listens or who's still on, it's all about the sauce, as I like to say.